we did a 17-week show where we were counting down the polls. Every week we were going through. And we found the true polls that were Trafalgar, Rasmussen, and Atlas Intel proven because their polls lined up with the results. So guess what? They were polling in apparently the right way. And then you had those that were trying, those that were false, and those were for sale. And so the authenticity, you said authentic, and we saw authentic coming in because we saw a heat poll that was done on the intensity of voters feeling about a certain issue. And in Arizona, the intensity of Democrat and Republican voters on immigration was very high. Why? They're seeing it in their state live. They're seeing people that are homeless, that are people that have come across the border. So they're seeing it live and in color. In Missouri, immigration was more like a debate at the barbershop. In Arizona, it was like they're seeing people in front of Walmart, in front of the ATM, at their gas station, and the issue was right there on the front doorstep. So the authenticity of the concern of the voter that was in Arizona was something that you can't just do talking points to stoke fear and then walk away. And that's what Harris did there. And that's why it was a 5.61%. He had a 5-point victory in previously close Arizona. So there isn't, you say authentic about the candidates, but there's also something authentic about the voters. The voters were voting for their very authentically felt positions. And are you going to improve my life here on this issue or not? And we saw the heat map in Arizona. We're like, you know what? You know, if she doesn't come out with something other than talking points in Arizona, they don't even understand that the good polls were showing that the underlying intensity of the authentic feeling of the American voter. And I feel like candidates in the establishment take that for granted and just try to give you talking points to stoke fear, to sway you. They're not really speaking to your authentic needs.
Yeah, so let me address that in two ways real quick. So the only thing that that I said I got wrong in this election, and I came out and did a video about it, is I was saying throughout the election, I didn't believe Trafalgar and I didn't believe those polls. I thought they were leaning to Republican on purpose, et cetera. I was wrong. They were more accurate, right? And so number one in our mission statement is boldly pursue the truth, right? And the truth is non-negotiable. So if it turns out that they had the more accurate polls, and
those three did, there's a lot of pollsters that were off the waterfall.
Yeah, and the more traditional pollsters were wrong, well, then you got to say it. It doesn't help to try to oh, no, but next time let's keep lying to ourselves that we're going to win, right? If you got to deal in the reality-based world. And so, but the larger point about policy is, look, a lot of my friends in the Max left, they think that crime is imaginary and it's a right-wing narrative. And that when I say it's real, that I'm helping a right-wing narrative. But look at California.
Cenk, what does that even mean?
No, I get what they're saying.
No, let him go. I know. I think I know where he's going.
He said that a few times. What does that even mean? Crime is not real.
Yeah, so what they're saying is it's not really going up. You guys are, and here's a poll thing. And if it is going up, it's actually because CVS is installed the automation machines. And there's some truth to that. And that's let some people. But at the bottom line, are people stealing catalytic converters? Are people
getting shot in the street, assassinated in the middle of freaking New York?
Is auto theft up, et cetera? So the point I wanted to make is in California, we passed Prop 47 that I told you about before. We accidentally moved some felonies into misdemeanors because I think we got lied to. They tried to reverse that in 2020 and it lost. It only got 38% of the vote. Totally lost at the polls. Why? Because at that point, crime had not spiked. So the voters didn't respond to it. It didn't matter if there was a right-wing narrative. It didn't matter what the propaganda was.
Post-COVID crime, to be specific.
Yeah, so before 2020, when we voted 2020, COVID hadn't happened. We hadn't had the spike. So the California voters, Democratic voters, were like, no, we're rejecting it. After the spike in 2021, 2022 in crime, which was real, then the voters come back and go, yeah, no, we're rejecting it now. Okay, now we're going 69% saying, bring them back up to felonies. I saw the crime. It's because of what Tom is saying. It's not imaginary. I experienced crime. My neighbor experiences crime. See, I tell this story and the left gets super mad about it. One of my neighbors, there's so many things that happen to all my neighbors, right? But one of my neighbors, a homeless guy, comes in and starts leering at the young woman she's got inside the house. And he's doing crazy things. And she comes out and she's outraged. She says, I'm going to call the cops. He says, go ahead. They're not going to come. And this was at the height of 21, 22, when it was just a mess in LA and California, right? And so And she's freaked out and she calls the cops and they're not coming. And he's like, I told you. He's like, I could just go take a seat in your backyard and there's nothing you could do about it.
Unbelievable.
And when stuff like that happens, you lose Democratic voters, you lose all voters, and people get super mad.
But what you're saying is absolutely correct about California crime. And I'll back up one chapter so everybody listening can understand this. There's a thing called the 3 strikes law that happened in California. California passed it. We're tough on crime. We're going to do this. And there was certainly crime that was there. Kamala Harris ran, as AG, and she was putting African-American males in prison at an over-index rate because the 3 strikes law actually went a little too low on what was a strikeable offense. You know what I'm talking about? They all end up in jail, and they're like, we need to repeal the 3 strikes law. And the Dems said, "Oh, we can't take that to the voters. Well, they'll say we're soft on crime, and there are bright reds in Central California. We can't have that." So you know what they did? They took felonies and they dropped them to misdemeanors.
Yeah.
So now you get less strikes because I've classified what's a strike, which led to the part you're talking about. So there was government interference and there was liberal game playing with the 3 strikes law where at the hands of Kamala Harris, who is known as one of the most racist AGs, but you can't say that. She's not racist. She's here. But if you go back in history and look at it, Californians have woken up to what was a 20-year run from 3 strikes to, let's not call them strikes anymore. Let's bring them down to misdemeanors. And finally, the voters come back and go, at the post-COVID spike, they're like, you know what?
Yeah, you know what this makes me think about?
I'm pissed off. We're going the other way.
If you simplify it, here's what it comes down to me. Common sense prevails. It's very simple.
Yep.
Bad policies have consequences. Data shows everything. You can sit there and say whatever you want. You're claiming you have better ideas. Like, in PHP, guys will say, I think we're doing it better than them. Really? Yeah. Go ahead. Show it in 2020. I think we're right and the other guys are wrong. Go ahead. Show your formula and show us what you do. And all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, they were right. Yeah, they were right. So maybe you ought to go back to listening to what's working. Common sense wins. Bad policies got exposed by Democrats in ways I cannot even believe that so many people bought into it. The basics, right? And then data coming back showing, yeah, California lost $1 trillion of money under management. New York lost $1 trillion of money under management. California, first time since 1850, 1851, you had a net migration rate of negative back to back to back. There is a reason for that. People are leaving you. And you know what was the most incredible data point that came out after the election? It's the map that shows which states got bluer and which states got redder. I don't know if you've seen this or not. Which states got redder, which states got bluer. Rob, we've shown this before. This isn't the one, it's another one.
Slack.
Which states got bluer?
Check Slack, Rob.
And when you saw this, 50 states, 100%
Not one blue.
of all states in America went more red. And what are we talking about? And by the way, look who went the reddest.
Yeah, exactly.
California and New York. Look
Florida.
at those two. So by the way, here's the thing. You know what? When sometimes we think about it and we say, don't make my Florida California. Don't make my Texas. And the one thing with us is, guess what? I've lived in California.
So have I.
I've lived in Texas for 5 years.
Yep.
And now we've been in Florida for 4 years. Okay. Texas got redder. But the fear was, well, what are you going to do when all the conservatives and Republicans and the red leaves New York and California? New York and California are going to get bluer. That's not what happened. So even with the red leaving, whoever that was left became, I don't know if you understand what
I'm getting.
So even after people left and people stayed, the people that stayed even got redder to say, dude, these policies are ridiculous. I'm out. Thoughts?
Yeah, so Latino men is a good example. So Latino men were heavily on the Democratic side, and Democrats view politics. Look, I think the right wing plays identity politics too. Again, we can get into that. But unfortunately for the Democratic establishment, they view everything through identity. And they're like, okay, blacks are ours, Latinos are ours, women are ours, educated are ours, et cetera, right? Educated is at least about something you did as opposed to who you are. So, but they took Latino men for granted. And then after the election, when Latino men flipped over to the Republicans and to Trump, they started saying, oh, they're sexist. That's why they got that macho culture, et cetera. First of all, blaming the voters, incredibly dumb strategy and also incorrect. And if you ignore that map that you just showed, that's a disaster for the Democratic Party. If you keep ignoring reality and ignoring the truth, that's how you lead to more losses. So if Latino men are so sexist, then why is the president of Mexico a woman? Right? If Latino men are so sexist, why did they vote for Hillary Clinton by a 31-point margin? This doesn't have anything to do with sexism. What it has to do with is that you didn't deliver for Latinos.
But
okay,
Cenk, it wasn't just Latino men. It was also black men, white men, basically any man. I'll tell you a quick story. A guy tells me, he goes, so you voted for Biden? I was like, yeah, I actually did. And you voted for Hillary? Yeah, I did. So you're going to vote for Kamala? I go, no, I'm on the Trump train. He goes, straight up? I go, yeah. He goes, oh, so you're not gay? I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? He goes, because the Democrats, they're just gays. They're just a gay party now. As a straight man, how do you vote for them? And I looked at him and I go, you're actually absolutely right. So you're a straight guy. Any straight guy, I mean, men have been gravitating away from the Democratic Party for the last 4 to 5 years. And it's just getting weirder and less common sense. So you're talking about they're fragmenting just Latino men. Every man in America is like, nah, I'm good. So why do you think just men are overwhelmingly done with the Democratic Party?
Obviously, it's more nuanced than that because the percentages are not.
It's actually not that nuanced. The number has shifted dramatically.
But I grant you the shift. That's exactly what we're talking about, right?
He has a problem with the gay community. But go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Okay, so
no judgment.
How can I be homophobic? My girlfriend's gay.
Okay, that's an interesting story. We'll come back.
Shout out to Central C. Sorry about that. So
let's not talk about Frank.
So look. I remember when the Democrats used to brag, oh my God, we got this big lead with women. And I'm like, well, these elections are super close. That means you have a huge deficit with men, right? Like you're leaving out half the equation. So why is the Democratic Party in some ways driving out men? We got to be real about it. We got to be truthful about it. It's because of perceptions. And what is the perception? Is it that policy? Have they passed any laws against men? Not that I know of, right? So I don't think it's policy. I think it's optics. So the optics is whenever there's a guy who's being a tough guy or strong, some guys who are being tough go too far? Of course. Are there some actual toxic guys? Of course. There's guys who beat their wives, etc., right? But anytime anybody did anything, it was called toxic masculinity. But sometimes it's just masculinity and it's not toxic, right? And every time you call it toxic masculinity, at the drop of a hat, at the slightest little thing, what you're doing is you're pushing men away. You're pushing them away because they're saying, wait a minute, I thought protecting women was just masculinity, not toxic masculinity, right? And now if that's toxic, then everything I learned is wrong. Like I'm supposed to protect and provide. And that's not, I didn't think that was a bad thing. And now, I just feel like that's why I bring up the crime thing, because I think the right wing and the left wing have massive misconceptions about each other. And one of the misconceptions that the right wing has is that the craziest guy you heard on the left represents all Democratic voters. And what we just showed in California is that's not at all true. California Democratic voters are saying, I don't want this extreme stuff either, right? And so I think that kind of language pushed a lot of people away, but also economic things matter, right? And so now we got both earners, of course, right? And women are head of household in terms of earning more money in a lot of households, et cetera. But when you're going to buy a house, the house costs more and it's really hard, right? And wages are lower and everything is hard. And the answer to that is not elect more minorities or elect more women. Now, if they're a great minority, great. If they're great women, great, right? But when you say elect based on identity, you're losing people, including men, who are saying, yeah, don't stop talking to me about identity. Start talking to me about the housing prices and about my wages, et cetera. So a combination of all those things did great damage in pushing men away.
Everybody is on the mindset of future looks bright, and we've been saying this for a few years. We want 1 million people to wear the gear future looks bright. If you notice one thing, I was sitting down with a few different people. The most common question being asked for me this week was, Pat, how come you don't take sponsors anymore? I said, because we want to represent what we believe in. I don't want to get here and tell you, go use this tool to shave yourself and all this other stuff, and we take $500,000 or go buy this Bitcoin or crypto or tool. That's not us. But you know what we do believe in? our stuff that we do. If I represent any other sponsorship, it's because we love their product and we use it. Right now, Future Looks Bright, new hats just came out. These will go on. I guarantee you, when you see this thing here, and it's in front of you, and you see the 3D, you're going to see how many compliments you get of these Future Looks Bright gear that came out, the black and red, the green and white, the PBD Podcast one here that says Future Looks Bright, Valuetainment on the side. Vinny has the, which one is that, Vinny?
It's a flat brim.
Flat brim, the
Baseball.
white with the PBD Podcast. The green is insane with the green and the white and the bottom Future Looks Bright. Go place your order. The first 100 people that place an order on these new hats will get a Future Looks Bright mug that is here. The first 100, this will be sent to you. Place your order. Go to vtmerch.com.
If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.